Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Maricel Dicion, and I am with Women of Influence. Today, we are joined by Zabeen Hirji, Executive Advisor at Deloitte, former CHRO at RBC, and now the founder of Purposeful Third Act. Today, we are here to talk about redefining aging, reclaiming visibility, and reshaping power in the workplace. A special thank you to our partner, Tenna, for working and collaborating with us on this event and sparking honest, inclusive conversations around health, aging, and visibility. Their commitment to breaking stigmas that affect us as we age ensures that women are fully seen at every stage in life. Before we hop in, just a little bit of house cleaning. For everyone tuning in, we'd love to hear from you. Please do share your comments and your questions. My colleague Rachel is moderating this discussion, and we'll be sure to try and get to as many questions as we can. Now, Zabeen, before we kick things off, I wanted to congratulate you on being invited to speak at the Drucker Forum. Congratulations, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, Zabeen, you're cutting out a little bit. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, perfect. I can hear you
Yeah.
now. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Yeah, pleasure to be. And I had a quick scan at some of the registrants, and thank you to the familiar faces in there and lots of new ones.
Wonderful. And Zabine, I also caught your latest article. And just a quick ask, because you do such a wonderful job at really framing what the Purposeful Act is, your perspective on this important lever that we should be paying attention to from all aspects, societal, cultural, and economical. Is that something that you'd be okay sharing on your platform so that our viewers can check it out after our LinkedIn Live?
For sure. Yeah, I'll post it on my LinkedIn later this week.
Amazing. All right, let's jump into it. So, Zabine, when we spoke in preparation for today, you shared that the third act has shaped your own view of leadership and purpose. I'd love to start there. What does the Purposeful Act mean to you, and why is it so powerful for women?
Yeah, so when I retired, and that word should be retired from RBC after my full time, full on career, I found myself asking not what do I want to do, but who do I want to be? Who have I been? And then moving to what do I want to do and what's left to do. And of course, it's a long story, which I'm going to truncate here. But going through that very reflective process and coming to the realization that we need to really disrupt that mindset of aging is a state of decline into one where there is experience, wisdom, skills, social capital that can be put to use. And we're at a time right now where we need all hands on deck. And we
Mhm.
are shutting out such a large proportion of people from being able to contribute and live these purposeful lives. And I would also underscore it's about contribution and impact. It's about learning and it's about joy.
So, Zabine, when we were chatting, I want to add this on as a follow up to your response, because I think it's important for us to frame the experience of aging in the workplace, which can be different for both men and women. So, the narrative, which is shifting typically and historically, has been that, societally, as women age, we are not looked at as, aging like fine wine, so to speak, if I can use that metaphor. Whereas with as men age and advance through their careers, there's a premium that is added to that. They're typically, they tend to step into this more um, higher profile, start phrasing or vision of what they can bring to the workplace. Is that something that we can speak to before we dive into the rest of the questions?
Yeah, sure. So it's it's an important perspective, and when you look at CEOs of TSX 100 companies or globally, and unfortunately they are mostly men, um, over half of them are over 60. So what's going on here? Where we see that, as you say, for men, the wisdom, the experience really it has a premium, and we see that much less for women. And shifting the narrative is like so many of these issues and things around inclusion. They are multidimensional levers we have to pull. There's a big societal aspect around all of the pressure that's put on women, well, starting from when we're young girls, but continuing as we age, just around physical attributes. And there's all of that, which I won't touch on, but absolutely a societal change required. um, but this narrative of doesn't have runway, we're not going to invest in them, not really interested in learning more, those are things that have to change. But the and I hope we have a chance to talk about, so what are the
Mhm.
things we can do to change that narrative? Because when you look at the data, you referenced, I think you shared with me actually the recent Bain report, and when we look at older workers, for example, over 55, in the next 5 years, they're going to be in G7 countries. They'll exceed a quarter of the workforce. This is a massive talent pool that we can't afford to not tap into. And I'd love to, as we talk a little bit further, be able to shift this conversation to, so what can we do about it as organizations and as individuals?
Absolutely. I'm actually going to dive into that right now. And just that statistic that you mentioned, Sabine, that's within the next 5 years, women over 50 will make up more than a quarter of the workforce. So, in your opinion, why is now the moment to challenge old narratives about aging and leadership?
Yeah, one of the interesting things is, in many European countries, this narrative is changing faster, and that's partly because of demographics. They have an older population already. And in the UK, for example, they increased the retirement age. And interestingly, men and women were different before, 60 and 65. They've now made it 66 for everyone. But those are very much driven by the economics. And also, when retirement ages were put into place, our life expectancy was a lot shorter. And so today in Canada, if a woman at 65 can expect to live to 87, a man to, I think it's around 84. So this longevity revolution, like many big changes, societal changes, we tend to think, oh, it's really far off. We don't need to do anything now, but it's not far off, as these numbers show.
Mhm.
And the economic and societal impact of tapping into our entire talent and skill base is critical. And I would finish this off by saying that we're also seeing changes in our immigration policies. And part of what has kept the Canadian workforce at a lower average age is immigrants, because they have been the net growth into our workforce, and they tend, of course, to be younger when they come to this country.
Mhm. Sabine, you use the term often, the wisdom economy. And my next question, I believe, ladders up into that because it's about what unique strengths do women in their 50s bring to this emerging, or I bet you would argue that it's here,
Yes.
beyond the traditional technical skills. There's a lot that can be
Mm.
leveraged when you hit or meet this point in your life. So what do women in their 50s uniquely bring to organizations, and what is the talent and the expertise that we might not be seeing but should be tapping into?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this quite a bit. And I think top of mind for me would be this capacity for pattern recognition, and the ability to be able to connect the dots based on the experience we've had, life experience and work experience. And I would not underestimate the life experience, where we've gone through uh, many personal challenges, overcome them, built resiliency. We've experienced bias in and systemic barriers in organizations. There's a lot that we bring from our life experience, and then of course work experience, and having gone through multiple transformations and economic downturns and growth cycles. And in the complexity of our world today, pattern recognition is really important for leadership and for decision making, to be able to make sense of so many different things that are going on at the same time. And that is, I see that that is starting to be more valued, and I'm seeing, it's hard to articulate that, though, and that's sort of one of my call to actions to women is, how do you take your experience and present it, turn it into a narrative that really shows to organizations what the value add can be. And I would say for myself, as an advisor to many organizations and individuals, and as you know, I have sort of my business affiliation with Deloitte on that side, but I do a lot of pro bono advising to governments, not for profits, and universities in this space. And the ability to connect across sectors, the ability to connect what was 30 years ago to what is today, and pick up on those nuances, huge. The other second thing I would say is purpose orientation. I think that women are more comfortable with impact over titles. It is a huge one of the things that older women are looking for in work is they want to work less hours. Often there is a bit of a phasing to creating a more balanced life, and also the what they value the most is it is to have work that's interesting, work that's impactful, and titles don't matter as much anymore. It's a little bit more difficult, I think, for men whose identities have been more tied to their professional lives than they have for women. So leading without a title, definitely and authentically, is something that women bring. And then generally, I would say in this age of AI, what's become and becoming ever more important is the fusion of AI and human skills. And those things like critical thinking, and that's asking good questions, not taking information at face value, the power of why, asking what if, or what are the possible unintended consequences to certain individuals or groups of people if we do this. Uh, the power of AI will be used for good, for economic value and societal value combined, if we fuse those skills. And emotional intelligence, listening to learn, not to judge, empathy, those are all things that come as you age. And the research tells you that, but I experienced that myself as well, in just your comfort at being more authentic, at being more service oriented, at just being more um, not just open to doing that, but getting the joy of contributing in that way.
Absolutely. Sabine, can I just summarize because those are four great points that you just shared. So the unique values or the unique differentiators that, after several years building your career that women in this stage bring to organizations, purpose orientation, so impact over titles, pattern recognition, so being able to see a pattern develop and the implications for what that pattern means and how that could impact the business or the organization. I love that you mentioned emotional intelligence. Those have been typically called the soft skills, but we could argue that those are really power skills given where we are today. And the last one, critical thinking, but that is in alignment with where we are in the age of AI.
Yeah,
Now,
thank you.
Zabine, for those who feel sidelined, what do you think is the most practical step that they can take to shift how they've been seen and valued in their workplace?
Um, I think it starts for me, and I'll use my experience because I think we're still there. There, it's not a one size fits all. There are different approaches to it, but for me, the just the stepping back, reflecting, and really clarifying, and then owning what I bring to the table. And I speak with a lot of women who are nearing that 50, 55 sort of age, thinking about what is it that I want to do, and this is something that really resonates. I actually have while this is aligned more for Purposeful Third Act, it applies for women still wanting to be full time in the workforce. I have a checklist on my website, zabeenhirji.com. And the so there's the ownership. The other thing I find really helpful is to create a small cohort of people going through a similar process. There's so much power, and as women I think we do it better.
Mhm.
Our we're more willing to be open and vulnerable with each other, and it's a different kind of conversation. So absolutely create your little group, and we've often seen that for women earlier in careers to have your board of directors, but I think this is more of a working together to do that. I also find that reciprocal mentorship is really powerful. So I and for me, some of my mentoring relationships are enduring, a few of them, but I meet with at least one person every week that just meet with once in this sort of advisory. Come to me with three questions and one thing you can teach me. That's kind of how, because I have reach outs, but what that does for me is it keeps me current and connected to a workforce that has five generations, um, and but it's own your narrative, be confident, and take some risks. It's not all going to work out.
I love that. And community. I love that you brought
Yes.
that up with creating a community around yourself, with those who are also in your cohort. Zabeen, could I take a question from our audience? This one came in from Nancy. And Nancy's question is: do you feel that wizened female leadership is more prepared to nurture a complex balance between inclusion, technology, and sustainability in a way that male leaders have continued to fall deaf to?
Um, I'm reflecting on that, and I'm someone that really believes in a mix of different things that we can do, and supporting female-led organizations is important for many reasons, for economic reasons as well, because there's so much data that shows that women get so much less money, whether it's venture capital, whether it's capital from banks, and yet they are more successful, their businesses are more successful. And so I think if I look at it in that context, um that yes, that's one of the solutions, but what's more important is how do we get men on board. We saw this, I would say, with our earlier diversity and inclusion um, work. As you know, I led that at RBC even prior to when I was CHRO, and one of the biggest change levers was getting men to be advocates and leaders and sponsors. And so I think we need to find ways to bring more men into this conversation, and helping that move forward. I'll say one thing here. One of the things that I was talking to somebody else in this space, and she said she sees a turning point as senior men get closer to moving into their next phases or third acts,
Mhm.
where there's more interest. So my answer is good idea, but that's to me, that's a workaround where we really need to fix on uh, spend time on leaders who are in powerful positions already to make the
Hmm.
change, because there's an economic case here too. This is not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do as well.
Hmm. Absolutely. And Zabine, so far what we've covered is we've reached this inflection point. What is it that women can do? So it's taking their narrative at, in this particular cohort and framing that to the organization in a way that clearly underscores the value they now bring to the organization after several years of experience. I'd love to turn our perspective to the organizations now. And this next question comes from our friends at TENA, who are passionate about opening up these types of discussions around health in the workplace. Now, Zabine, in your experience leading HR and advising organizations, how should companies think about practical supports to make sure women's contributions aren't sidelined as they age? So, examples like flexibility, wellness resources, or even awareness training.
Yeah. So firstly, absolutely, organizations can and must play a big role, because this is about their talent strategy and about their business growth. There was some interesting data from AARP, I think that's the American Association for older adults.
Mhm.
Um, and they did this study a few years ago to ask organizations what they were doing in this space. And what really struck me was only 4% of organizations had taken action to focus on this cohort, this over 50 cohort.
Mhm.
And in contrast, you see the focus on uh, millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, absolutely essential. But there are 5 generations we need to tap into. And what can we learn from what we've done there to apply here? So I talked about mentoring. I think intergenerational learning and mentoring, it shows you the value that's created also in developing human capital. I asked one of my good friends, Godine Sebe, who some sometimes asks me to meet with certain people, just as I ask her to do the same. And I said, "Well, Godine, how can I help?" And she said, "Just having a conversation with them about their career validates their aspirations and ambitions, and it
Mhm.
emboldens them to take the next steps." So think about that in an organization in an intergenerational way. Flexible work is really what older people are often looking for. They want to have more time for life pursuits. And that can come in the form of part-time work. It can come in the form of reduced hours. It can come into more. I remember when actually at RBC, there was an older woman executive who wanted longer vacation time, and she still maintained her EVP job, but she had 2 months off in the summer. And that was a trade-off as an organization we were prepared to take. And offering training, there's different data on that. You see data that says older um, adults are not offered as much training opportunity. I've seen data that says while they get less than younger people, they're still getting opportunities, and it's not always been being taken on. But really stepping back and looking at the training, reskilling, and not sort of saying, "Oh well, this person's only going to be here for another 3 years," but think about it in a 10-year horizon. And by the way, the loyalty and retention of older women is higher than that of younger people. So let's
Mm.
shift that narrative as well.
It's been going back to the point. I love what you said earlier, which is this is not just the right thing to do, it is absolutely the smart thing to do. So, beyond workplaces, and I think this ladders up beautifully to what you're doing with Purposeful Third Act, your organization. What does redefining aging and visibility mean for the economy as a whole? This question came about as we were speaking with our partners at TENA, and they brought up this important point. Could you speak more to that?
Yeah, so the way so my vision is to create what I call a purposeful third act movement, where more people. This is a slightly later phase. Now I retired from the bank at 57, so I was pretty young. And what the opportunity that I see is particularly for people in leadership roles, people in professional, with professional um, uh, capabilities and roles, finance, HR, marketing, kinds of things like that. And of course, the public sector as well. They have experience, they have skills, they have social capital. And what I mean by that is you can make connections that can really result in business growth for others, not for profits, advancing their work. I did not realize the power of social connections until this stage. Um, and if we're able, so my goal is if we're able to have even 20% of people in this group dedicate 20% of their time to to social impact, inclusive prosperity, just think of the impact on our GDP and the well-being of our society. That's what I see as the opportunity. And it makes you as an individual happier and more well and healthier. There are all of those things. But just think of the power of building inclusive prosperity if we can turn this and if we can support them in being able to do that, because it's not a straightforward path. There are lots of supports that can be offered, and again, some of them I talk about in the article. So it needs a whole systems wide change in order to do this. And as I mentioned, there are some countries in Europe, France, UK, Italy, that have a more acute demographic issue that are really leaders in this space, along with some organizations. So you've got the Unilevers, Aviva, a number of other insurance companies that are leading in this space.
Well, Zabeen, I'm just mindful of time. Our viewers are very chatty in the comment section. I love to see it. But my last question for you is, if you were advising a CEO or CHRO today, what is one immediate lever that they could pull to better retain and advance this cohort and talent, or cohort of talent?
Um, Educate yourself to start with, build awareness, look at your own data in your organization. Employee surveys today can be sliced and diced in so many different ways. We look at that generation. What are you learning? And take some tangible actions based on what you've learned. So it's not just your words, but at the end of the day, it's the actions that are going to make a difference. So take those actions based on that. And maybe if I was thinking of an action that probably applies everywhere, is intergenerational teams, so that you can really see the value of the different generations bring.
Zabine, if I can steal one more minute of your time, any last pieces of advice or any pointers for our audience members, as especially those who are navigating this point in their career?
Um, know yourself, tell your story with confidence, with a little bit of swagger, and ask for what you want.
All I heard there was tell your story with swagger, and I'm going to carry that with me because I love that. Thank you so much, Zabeen. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today. We are at time. I highly recommend that you follow Zabeen on LinkedIn. She always shares such incredible articles. If you can find it, my favorite is Table 89. And I know Zabeen will be sharing another article that speaks more about Purposeful Third Act and her work in this space. Before we sign off officially, I would like to thank our partner Tenna for helping us spark the conversations around health, aging, and visibility that are too often left out of the workplace conversations. Tune in on October 21st, where we will be back with our next LinkedIn Live event called Leading While Bleeding. I will leave it there. Stay tuned for more details. Thank you again, Zabeen, and I hope to see you back here soon.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone.